Ariana Grande has really been through some shit within her career, and she's always managed to put it to tape. She has released some of the most emotionally complex, dense pop records throughout her career, and in July she will release her 8th record, Petal, which by the sounds of it proves to be even more emotionally complex than anything that she's done before. But throughout her 7 records so far, she's traversed so many different sounds. She's given us some of the biggest hits of this era of pop music, but has also managed to become an albums artist in a way where she has managed a level of cohesion that many of her peers who have chased hits for this long haven't been able to. For this episode, I really want to track her career by ranking the 7 albums so far in the lead up to the 8th. Maybe once the 8th one comes out, I will add it in as a little amendum to this episode. But for now, let's run through the 7, all the way from Yours Truly to Eternal Sunshine, which came out back in 2024. Ariana has also appeared in 2 of the Wicked films over the past couple years. And in the summer, she will embark on one of her first tours since the Thank You Next era, when she ended up headlining Coachella. It's going to be like quite a summer for her. We thought that she would be retreating into acting. But instead, she seems to be going full throttle back into pop music. I'm not sure if this is going to be the last we're going to hear of her for a while. We thought that of Eternal Sunshine, and then she just ended up extending that era for quite a while with music videos, a deluxe as well. So right now it feels like she's actually pretty inspired in the music space, and I'm excited to hear how a new album and a tour is going to cultivate something new for her. For this episode of the Pop Pod, though, this is the Ariana Grande album ranking. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to follow or subscribe to the Pop Pod. You can also rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to it. Really helps with the visibility. And I'll drop the Instagram and TikTok down below in case you want to check out clips from the podcast before you fully invest. But if you're new here as an Ariana fan, I feel like you will like the Pop Pod in general. We talk about great pop classics. We've talked a lot about Into You by Ariana Grande while talking about pop classics in the past. So hit us up, subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Let's get into the episode. So the journey with Ariana Grande begins basically back in 2013 when she releases her debut album, Yours Truly. She had been a Nickelodeon star prior to this and had kind of put her toe into the musical world, but it hadn't quite stuck, with a song called Put Your Hearts Up. It's pretty bad, to be honest. She officially launches her music career, though, with My Way featuring Mac Miller. That instantly becomes a top 10 smash for her. And really starts off what is an illustrious career. I feel like she is within like 5 or 6 artists who have been incredibly important to the trajectory of pop music over the past 10 years. And we'll talk about exactly how she's been able to do that. But at one point in her career, she really started speeding up the output of how she put out music, and that completely changed pop. She really started following a rap formula for releasing music and showed pop artists how they could really compete with hip hop within the streaming era. And I don't think she gets enough credit for having done that. Also while going through an incredibly difficult time, and I think really pioneering real-time pop music of just putting shit out when you feel like it and when you're feeling away. We'll get into that, but for now, let's start with the number 7 album in my ranking, which is her debut album, Yours Truly. I think that this has some really good moments on it, and for an artist who was transitioning out of teen stardom, it's actually a surprisingly mature album. I think that she picks up on many mature R&B references, jazz references. There's also some musical theater references in there as well. And for the most part, showcases her voice in a really decadent, expensive kind of way. I think that My Way is a great single. I think that Baby I is a great single as well, up there with some of her best. I think that she's just like not quite yet carving out an identity. I think that the songs are not the best written of her career. And I just think in general, like, we start to see who Ariana is going to become, but we don't really have a full idea at that time. And that's really not a criticism of this work, because as a debut album, I think that it works exceptionally well. I think that actually, when I think of all the teen stars, I think that this is probably one of the best first albums to come from it. When I'm thinking of like Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, none of them quite managed to carve the musical path that this one does. And it's easy to, even looking at Eternal Sunshine, like tie the trajectory right back to Yours Truly. So I think that that is impressive, but maybe it's just even more so impressive that this album is at 7th in the whole rank of Ariana albums. I don't know how you all feel about that, but for me, this is pretty obvious. 7th place. Let's move on to 6th place, and this might be a bit boring, but for this one, I'm going to go with her second album, My Everything. This is the moment that I think we start to see that Ariana is going to be a massive hit maker. But not only that she's going to be a massive hit maker, but she's able to try on many different genres and almost all of them work. When you think about how varied this album is, it's kind of crazy. She starts off with Problem, which becomes a massive record for her. And she even gets Iggy Azalea on that. That's the timestamp that this song has. But it's got this vintage kind of funky groove to it that's sort of reminiscent of Timbaland and a little bit reminiscent of Jermaine Dupri's work with Mariah Carey as well. The chorus doesn't even have like a actual like melodic sung part to it. It really is just pre-chorus and then goes into this like, I've got one last problem without you refrain, and still she manages to make it work because her voice is just so vanilla-y, if that's a word. Then we get Break Free with Zed. This is obviously her entry point into the EDM world. This is the part when I break free, 'cause I can't resist it no more. It's probably the most obvious EDM song that she makes, but the songwriting on it is impeccable. Like, this song can still go off in a club today because it's got this real anthemic, empowering nature to it. And it's something that only somebody with a voice like Ariana could really pull off. It's a really, really impressive song, I think. Zed, obviously, at the peak of his EDM powers. And dance music becomes something that's kind of important in this part of Ariana's career, but it's not within that EDM world. It's actually within a far more interesting, like, underground club world that's being spearheaded by a Norwegian producer who goes by the name of Kashmir Cat. Ariana is kind of one of the first mainstream artists to really embrace Kashmir Cat, and he goes on to work with so many different people from this point onwards, like anybody from Sia to Kanye West to, I think, even like Katy Perry was in there at some point. I'm not sure, but the list goes on and on and on. But Ariana is the first one to really go into this sound, and Be My Baby is one of the songs she does it with on this album. And I remember at the time just thinking, like, this is really fucking cool. Like, this is a young pop star who's come from a really sort of highly stylized, fabricated world within the Nickelodeon child star vibe. And she's very quickly like stuck to her guns and is finding really cool shit in really different places. And I feel like this record doesn't always do it. There are like a lot of just straight down the line pop songs, but there are moments where she goes into these vibes where I'm like, she has the kind of musical thinking mind of a Madonna or a Gaga, where they're themselves looking to more interesting places to really put a stamp on pop music and do something that's different. And that's my biggest takeaway about My Everything. The reason that I put it down low is because I think just musically, it's all over the place. Like, there are so many styles on this album. As an album, it maybe doesn't work super well, but as a collection of songs, each of them is really strong. And I actually do think it's an important thing for a pop star at this moment in their career to have an album like this where they're trying out so many different things, because it shows them what they like, it shows them what they work well in, and it shows them what the audience responds to. And she manages to have hit after hit after hit on this album while also doing so many different things. And she's only on her second album at this point, but I think has already very much established herself as like the current force in pop music. And it's something that she only continues on with, which we're going to be able to talk about because my number 5 album is Dangerous Woman. And I promise, like, after this point, this is where I switch it up. But Dangerous Woman is her 3rd album. She does something really cool in that she fights back the label and she really is persistent on the title track being the lead single. This is like an artist who at this point has been working within really trendy sounds and had hits in them on the second record, but decides she wants to do a ballad for the first single on this album. At kind of the peak of her pop powers. She tries out Focus as a standalone single that kind of repeats the formula that Problem did. It doesn't work, and she goes back to the drawing board and decides to follow her artistic impulse. And you will find that with all the incredible pop artists, like, they all have this story of this moment where they start following their impulse, and it's really the mark of a superstar. Like, there are these stories of Beyonce, for example, with B-Day, where she just ignores her management, goes away, records this album by herself, doesn't listen to anybody else really, and does exactly what she wants to do. And that is the kind of like force and vision that has crafted one of the most impressive careers in music, full stop. And this is kind of a mini version of like Ariana having this moment for herself, because she sticks to her guns, goes with it. It's not one of the biggest hits of her career, but it is a huge hit. It's a top 10 record and really showcases her voice in a really impressive way. Like in the kind of way where people are starting to be like, this could be the next Mariah Carey right here, because the vocal performance on that song is just so out of control. There's also more of a darkness that's coming into play in this album. It's a more personal album than what My Everything was as well. But it still is kind of all over the place stylistically. When you think of the second single, Be Alright, which has this sort of like 90s dance flavor to it, alongside something like Side to Side, which is a way more, I mean, it's like a dance hall inspired sort of song that has Nicki Minaj on the feature as well. Nicki Minaj becomes a very important musical partnership for Ariana, even though we don't like to say that right now, but she is. So many different sounds going into the pot here, but there is a real maturity that comes across on My Everything that I really find quite impressive. I just need to pull up the track list so that I don't forget to talk about any of the songs. But honestly, she's going everywhere on this, like Greedy. Incredible vocals, but she's going crazy over like more of almost like something that you could attach back to an artist like Diana Ross. Then you've got Everyday with Future, which is Ariana starting to go into a trap sound that will be very important to her moving forward as well. But then you've also just got like more like straight down the line pop tracks like Bad Decisions. One that's really important to talk about though is Into You, which is when she starts working with Swedish hitmakers, but she's also working on this one with Southern Katecha, who had done like some incredible work with One Direction. And then she's also got Max Martin on here. Max Martin is an important figure that comes in and out of Ariana's career throughout, but the perfection that they managed to bring to the surface on Into You is kind of everything. Like, this is one of the slickest pop tracks ever written, in my opinion. If you listen to this podcast, you will know that I often ask people, what the perfect pop song is. And Into You is always in the conversation in one way or another, because it's Max Martin perfection, but it's also Ariana just showing off her pop chops and her pop instinct. Her voice on that song sounds incredible. And also she's just able to like conjure so much emotion and so much feeling. And I think that's why Ariana's music works so well, because she is able to bring so much emotion to the surface while also just like delivering the hooks. It's like really, really impressive and so well done on Into You. But the only reason I put this album low is because, once again, it's trying on so many different sounds, and I'm still not getting an idea of like the way that Ariana really wants to go to carve out a legacy. And I feel like she is starting to find it, and I think she's finding it in songs like Dangerous Woman. But it's not quite there yet. It's not quite fully formed and fully realized. This is like a pop machine record that tries out many different things to bag hits, and it bags some hits. Like Into You's not a huge hit, but it's still like a sizable chart hit. But Dangerous Woman is, and then Side to Side is the one that really, really explodes and gives Ariana a massive moment. This is where we're going to interrupt the trajectory and the flow of this conversation, because going into what I think is her number 4, what are we up to? 7, 6, 5. Going into her number 4 album, I'm not going to go in the trajectory that we've been going in so far, because I'm going to say that her number 4 album's Positions. Positions to me is like a pretty underrated record for Ariana. Ariana, like, it sounds silly to say that she spearheaded the trap pop movement, because I think that like, you could really put that back on trap figures like Young Thug and Future, who are bringing so much melody to their music anyway, that it's not a far jump to like bring trap music into the pop world. But Ariana is kind of like the first major female or first major pop star, full stop, to start bringing this sound into the mainstream. And she does it like really effortlessly on Thank You Next. She obviously loves that sound, and she takes a similar team that she was working with on that record, Tommy Brown being one of the figureheads and Victoria Monet as well in the writer's room. And she brings it into a record that's released, like several records come in pretty quick succession in Ariana's career. You get Sweetener, you get Thank You Next, and then you get Positions, all within a matter of years. Positions comes during the pandemic, at a time when we're just very happy to have music, but we're also very happy to critique it. She's also coming off what is probably going to go down as the blockbuster of her career in Thank You Next, because obviously she has so many big records off that album. So this one was always going to be a tricky one, and it's a little bit like ill-received. I think that the trap sound on this album comes off as a little bit half-baked, because this is, compared to records that have come before it, I think because she tried so many different sounds out on those albums, it's like more of a slight sound. And that is not the way that I've interpreted it in the years that have passed since. I actually think this is some of her best vocal work and also some of her best songwriting and one of the more mature works. This is one of the rare points in Ariana's career. I don't mean to laugh because she's really been through some shit, but this is one of the rare points in her career that she's going through kind of happy moment. She's in a marriage with who I think is like a real estate agent from California or something like that. Anyway, she's in a like happy marriage at this point. She's loved up and she decides to write this album about sex. But this isn't like an erotica album. It's a little bit subtler than that, even though I don't think you could call a song like 34, 35 subtle. But it is a little more subtle than erotica. And she just decides to make this trap pop sound her playground. It's a space for her to like try new things out vocally, to try like insanely impressive things out vocally. Songs like Nasty and Hair, My Hair. The notes that she's hitting are just like on another level. Like, it's so impressive. And it gets to the point where it feels like on so many songs on this album, she's just being like, watch what I can do. Now watch what I can do now. Now watch what I can do now. But every single time, it's so impressive. But there's also just like such a slick quality to this where Ariana's point of view combined with her vocals, combined with the way that she was writing hooks at this point in her career, is just so impressive that it doesn't feel like she has to do too much. There's something really introspective and really intimate about this album that I really respect now listening back. And I think at the time, the like slightness and the minimalism of it had annoyed me a little bit. But now I just feel like it is such a buoyant and such a clever album. Songs like Safety Net with Ty Dolla $ign. I just think the vocal production on that song is like absolutely insane. And there's videos of her doing like the vocal comping from this album that you should go back and watch because it is actually so impressive. She's such a talented vocal producer. And that's why there is a crispness to the way that her voice sounds on this album, because she not only knows it so well by this point, but she also knows exactly how to produce it. And that's why I think that this album sounds so good. Like, there's points at Shut Up that I listen to now where I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that she sounds so good. Maybe you should shut up. Just Like Magic as well is another song where I think she sounds phenomenal. Just like magic, just like magic. Middle finger to my thumb and then I snap it. But there's also like this like dark melancholy that rises to the surface at points on this album too that I think she gets to on Off the Table, Safety Net, of course, and West Side, which is one of my absolute favorites. I also think that it's worth talking about POV because I think that that's such a clever song. The way that she writes it, and this is like testament to how good her songwriting is at this point, in that it's about like wanting to see yourself in the same way that someone who loves you sees you. So like wanting to build your self-confidence off the perspective that someone who really loves you has. And I think that's a really interesting, excuse the pun, POV for a love song in general. I just think that she like approached the love album, if you want to call Positions that, in a really interesting, different way. And this is the point where I really start to hear her confidence as like a maker of songs. That sounds so silly to put it like that, but she really is getting so confident as a producer on Positions, and I think it's a major flex of an album. It is in number 4 just because I think that what she's able to pull off with the next 3 albums that come feels far more profound, and this one does feel slight in comparison, but I think it's a really good album. In number 3, I'm going to go with her most recent album, Eternal Sunshine. This is an interesting album because it comes off the back of a divorce. She had split up with her partner that she was talking about on Positions with a lot of love. And she was also in a new relationship that was being heavily scrutinized by the public. So you've got 2 things that Eternal Sunshine is reckoning with. It's reckoning with a divorce, and it's also reckoning with the way that the public is viewing her at that time. In many ways, you could kind of call it her Reputation album if you want to. But she teams back up with Max Martin for a full album. This is the first album that she's made specifically just with Max Martin. And I think because of it, it is also her most cohesive album. She's also got Ilya on board as a songwriter and producer on the whole thing. He has apparently been really important to the making of Petal as well. And I just think that like closeness that the 3 of them have together, that musical synergy really works here. And I do think that there's a number of different things that they try on Eternal Sunshine. There's like a real, more like Robin-esque Swedish pop sound that goes into a song like We Can't Be Friends. And then there's obviously the vogue of it all on Yes and. Which I feel like is kind of an anomaly and like unhelpful to discussing the actual like cohesion of the record. But then there's also like this real R&B sound that seems to be inspired by like more of a Jermaine Dupri, Mariah style of writing that comes across particularly on songs like The Boy Is Mine, but also True Story too. This is a true story about all the games I know you play. I think the overarching thing that pulls this album together though is that there's just like a prettiness and a calmness to it. People have often talked about in Ariana's career how she is like a therapy pop artist. And I do think that that is true because she's been able to turn a lot of her trauma into these like incredible pop songs. But this one really feels like a therapy pop album because it just has a calm that goes over it. And it has this almost like hypothesis is like, imagine if you were able to like take all your trauma, all your heartache, anything that's caused you pain in your life and just like do away with the memories of it. But with doing that, you've also got to take away the good memories. And it is based off the Jim Carrey film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think it's really cool and interesting to take that concept from that film and put it in the context of not only her career, but her life in general. And because of that, I think she comes up with some really interesting songwriting. Like, I think that Eternal Sunshine, the song, is like one of the most pretty songs that she's ever written. But there's also like a weightlessness to some of the stuff that she pulls off in here. I think Supernatural is up there with Into You. In the realm of like her perfect pop songs, and there's definitely a real weightlessness to that. She's super like in love, invested in that song, and that comes across really well. But I think that the melancholy that she's able to bring to that prettiness is what gives this album an eeriness and enough to give it a depth that goes beyond it just being a pretty sounding album. That comes across particularly on We Can't Be Friends. Can't be friends, but I'd like to just pretend. Which, I don't know if We Can't Be Friends is about her relationship with the press or is about her relationship with an ex-lover, but whatever it is, there's like an unsettled melancholy to it that kind of gives you goosebumps. And that also, like real Swedish pop sound, really works for her voice. And you also just get such an idea of how she has such an understanding of her own vocal production in that song as well, because it sounds off the charts. But there is something about what was going on. I guess it starts on Sweetener and it really reaches a fever point and positions where vocally she's starting to like go into this much more pretty kind of like delicate space where she's in her higher register a lot. And it's really cool to hear her start singing with her chest again on Eternal Sunshine, on songs like Bye. Bye, bye, I'm taking what's mine. Yeah. Bye, bye, it's over. And also the beginning of True Story, which I think is spectacular, but also getting some beats that like push her into that zone. I think we forget that Max Martin really started out early in his career with more like R&B flavored music, particularly when he's working with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC early on. And he brings that to Eternal Sunshine. I guess he's brought it to some of the Weeknd's music as well, but I do forget like how good he is at like crafting beat. And I think you hear that on The Boy Is Mine. I can't wait to try it. Let's get intertwined. The stars they align. The boy is mine. and True Story in particular. I just think like this is a really fully realized record. If we talk about like not having much cohesion earlier on in her career, this is an incredibly well pieced together project where she maybe has a perspective that she hasn't been able to have on other records, because on Sweetener and Thank You Next in particular, she's just really going through it. Like she's really tunneling through the shit at that point, and she's not able to see the situation really for what it is, which makes for some thrilling music. But I feel like this one is maybe manages to tie up some loose ends in the way that those two projects can't really. And for that reason, I just think it feels like a really complete, calm, and perfect album. So it's in my number 3, but now I want to go into the fire with the top 2, which is when she is really, really going through it. Let's go with number 2, Thank You Next. Thank You Next, maybe her most important album, I think, as a pop star. It comes within, I think it was like 6 months of Sweetener. Mac Miller, her former fiance, I think, maybe fiance, maybe just like long-term partner, had passed away. She had also broken up with Pete Davidson. The two of them had had an incredibly like public relationship. They got engaged. She has a song about him literally named after him on Sweetener. That doesn't work out. And so instead of like retreating, she just goes fully into her art. And I think that at this point, she's really clicking with this writing team that's like Taylor Parks, Tommy Brown, and then also Victoria Monet as well. And she feels comfortable enough in the studio to just write things from such a personal point of view. She's starting to do that quite well on Sweetener. But this is like diary therapy pop, like straight to you in real time. In fact, the time in between writing and recording Thank You Next and actually putting it out is like stupidly short.
Thank you.
And the fact that she's able to do that, but then in the weeks after it, give a really blockbuster music video as well, the Mean Girls, like overall that she brings into that, is just so impressive and is a testament to how good she is at a pop star, as a pop star, where she's able to go through something, write about it, produce it, and then bring it to a visual aesthetic in really short succession. It's just really cool. And she's just so like hyper focused on Thank You Next in a way where it's just like the emotions are coming and she's just like writing and she's just like putting it out one after the other. She follows Thank You Next up with Seven Rings.
You like my hair? Gee, thanks. Just bought it. I see it. I like it. I want it. I got it.
Seven Rings felt very exciting at the time. It's like very inspired by 2 Chainz's kind of music, and there was a bit of a thing at the time where like I think he kind of called her out, but then they settled it and he ended up on a remix of the song. I don't think Seven Rings has aged particularly well, but at the time it felt quite exciting. And then you've got Break Up With Your Girlfriend, which is another massive hit for her.
Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored.
Interestingly, I think Seven Rings and Break Up With Your Girlfriend are 2 of the like least successful songs on Thank You Next. What Thank You Next does is it manages to just like respond to this trauma in such a real-time way that it's actually haunting. Like imagine writing a love song for like a lover who has passed away and putting it into this like incredible sort of like 60s Motown style ballad is so impressive. Then you also have Ghostin', which I think is one of the best songs that she has ever written.
I know that it breaks your heart when you cry again. Instead of ghosting him, move it through.
Talking about being next to a new partner while thinking about a partner who has passed away and thinking that maybe you would prefer to be with them. Like that's such a profound concept to bring to this like blockbuster pop album. And I think that's what Ariana maybe doesn't get enough credit for, in the fact that she is able to write so personally. Like so much of this writing is without metaphor. It's just like straight from the heart, straight to you. I think often when artists do that, they can write quickly and forget about the fact that they are writing pop hooks and that needs to be like catchy and melodic and sticky. Ariana doesn't forget about that at all, because this is some of her most catchy work ever, like NASA. So good. Bloodline just has such a hook to it. Fake Smile, also so good. Bad Idea, so many great hooks in that as well. She is just writing them like it's coming to her, and she's just spitting them out like it's absolutely nothing. There's an effortlessness to Thank You Next that is genuinely so impressive. And I can't think of another artist who, like, in the fire has been able to respond to it so quickly with such a pointed and such an excellent, such a realized record as Ariana is able to do on Thank You Next. And it's going to be a really important part of her legacy, I think, that album. But my number one for her has to be Sweetener. And the reason that I say this is because this just sounds so freaking good, this album. I talked earlier about Ariana starting to realize that she could experiment with pop music on Be My Baby with what she was doing with Cashmere Cat. And Sweetener is her really making this super interesting sound to respond to an incredibly horrific situation that she decides that she's going to persevere through and respond to with radical optimism, not to borrow from Dua Lipa. But this comes after the Manchester bombings, this album. And it is such a uniquely optimistic, like an uplifting album. She writes No Tears Left to Cry, and I think that says it all. It's like this futuristic, weird, kind of bubbly, sweet, candy-soaked record that sounds like nothing else that's going on at the time. But the most impressive thing about it is people are expecting Ariana to come back and respond to that situation with this real sadness and heaviness. And she comes back and decides instead to face it with this song that's like, yeah, I've been through it. I'm feeling some shit, but I'm also going to be really defiant in my positivity and try and make something that's uplifting, because at the end of the day, like, a lot of people are counting on her to be uplifted. And a lot of the people who attended that concert, like, were genuinely like having the best night of their life. And I think that's like sometimes what we forget with pop music is it has this ability to create like sunshine and create positivity in so many people's lives. And the fact that she came back and decided to respond to that situation in this way, I just think is so, so impressive. And from there, it only gets weirder. Like, I think that her musical synergy with Pharrell is so impressive on this album, and they do some really weird and wonky stuff. I think the title track is an example of that.
Get it, get it, get it, hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, flip it, flip it, flip it. You made me say, oh.
It matches this almost like Annie-like musical theater quality that comes through in the chorus with this really weird, wonky, hypnotizing beat that comes through in the verse. And that's also something that they pull on like quite expertly on REM as well, which I think is a super important song for her career.
Before you speak, don't move, 'cause I don't wanna wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
But also like the groove and the melody and the R&B touches that are on this whole album in general are so cool. Like, Blazed as a song is kind of has the ability to be sort of boring at the hands of any other pop star. But because of her hooks, her voice, and her vocal layering, it ends up becoming so rich and like so decadent.
I will never let you go.
I also think her confidence and her point of view as a songwriter just continues to expand. Like, the Dangerous Woman vibes are carried over really into a song like God Is a Woman, which really explores her femininity, and like femininity is a super important part to this album.
You my one. When all is said and done, you believe God is a woman.
But I think also like recognizing her own anxiety and how it plays a part in her music and how she can also like work through it within her music. That's obviously something that's way more fully realized on Thank You Next. But a song like Breathe In just has this like such beautiful calm to it.
Just keep breathing and breathing and breathing and breathing. I gotta keep on breathing.
That is one that she works on. I'm pretty sure that it's Max Martin, but it's definitely someone in Max Martin's team. It's Ilya, not Max Martin. And also Sarvan Katecha. And they just like, I don't know, there's just such an effortlessness to that song that really like, even just for a brief moment, makes you think that everything is going to be okay. And at the same time, while she is creating this calm on songs like R.E.M. and Breathe In, she's also like talking her shit on a song like Successful and being cocky. And I love when she's kind of like in a cocky mode as well.
It feels so good to be so young and have this fun and be successful. I'm so successful. Yeah.
No matter where she goes on this album too, I think like Good Night and Go covering Imogen Heap too, like so many different things and ideas that come into the pot on Sweetener, but there's this generally like weird and sort of unsettling sound that ties it all together that felt so unique to Ariana at the time. And I remember listening to it and being like, this is the album that really truly makes her great. And when I think about the question of does she have a classic, this is the album that I refer to because it's the album where she tried out bold things. She still retained a really unique perspective as a songwriter. Her voice was still really in it, but she was experimenting and making something that was so uniquely her own. And that's why I have to put Sweetener at number one every time. One of my favorite pop records, obviously my favorite record from Ariana. Obviously we'll wait and see what she does on Petal, but that's my number one. If you guys have a different perspective, I'm sure you do, hit me in the comments. If you can comment where you're watching or listening to this, you can also DM me. I'm really interested to know what your top three are and how they differ to mine. Hit me in DMs or comments with that. If you liked this episode, I'll just reiterate one more time. Hit subscribe to the podcast. We have plenty of exciting stuff coming up on the Pop Pod. Also rate us 5 stars if you want to do so and become part of our pop gang. This has been a great episode to join you for. I will see you next time on the Pop Pod. Thank you so much for listening.